Adaptation News, where I tell you all about the books that you love for the big and small screen, spoken for by a composer who actively works in the business. Hey everyone, I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem, and this is Adaptation News, Episode 4. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. I'm a composer, now also booktuber. You can find my music in The Wheel of Time Season 2, His Dark Materials Season 3, and the newly released psychological horror film, Dead Whisper. So, as I mentioned, for those of you who are new to the channel, I'm a composer, also now a booktuber. So I have spent the last few years composing in film, television, and gaming, and lately I've been specializing in book adaptations. So over the last couple of years, as I mentioned, I worked on The Wheel of Time, I've worked on His Dark Materials. I actually even worked on an official companion album by Brent Weeks for his series Lightbringer. And so I wrote the main theme, Lightbringer, for that. And so I actively pitch on adaptations. I'm very well involved in the book community as well as the music for books community. And so I'm always privy to little bits of information here and there that are not necessarily under NDA, but they're not necessarily like publicly available, right? There's specific tools like IMDb Pro that we have access to kind of see where are projects in the pipeline. Beyond that, I'm also well versed in what does it mean when something stalls. You know, I can shed a little bit more light from kind of a production perspective, where they're at in a production, or if they mention something like, hey, this is no longer moving forward. But then you start to see on IMDb Pro, cast members are being added, or like a lower level production people are being added. It's kind of like maybe they're just not ready to make an announcement yet. So you can kind of maybe interpret this and read between the lines and see where it's at. So if you like this kind of video, please like and subscribe. And now on to the books and their adaptations. So the first one I want to highlight is Gina Prince Bythewood's Children of Blood and Bone adaptation. Now this book is part of a 3-book series. So Children of Blood and Bone was the first book by Tomi Adeyemi, and the second book, Children of Virtue and Vengeance, came out also a couple years back. Basically, this has had a long-running runaround, I guess you could say, as far as an adaptation is considered. It was first at Lucasfilm, and then it kind of stalled there. And we didn't really know where things were going to go. And now Gina Prince Bythewood, who is the woman behind The Woman King. There's Thuso Mbedu from The Woman King as Zeli, Amandla Stenberg, The Hate You Give, as Amari, Damson Idris Snowfall as Inan, and Tosin Cole from Supercell as Zane. So very interesting. Apparently there's also Viola Davis, Idris Elba. So pretty stacked cast here. And they finally have an actual release date. So they're saying that the release date will be January 15th, 2027. So we got a couple years to wait, of course, but that's going to be a Paramount Pictures production. So it's really nice to see this moving forward, because I think one thing I really love about fantasy in general as a genre is over the last 10-15 years, you're seeing stories by authors that typically didn't have as much of a voice in the fantasy space. And so you're seeing now, in this case, African-inspired fantasy. You are seeing more Middle Eastern, Indian fantasy. You're seeing Chinese fantasy. And, you know, people come from different cultural backgrounds, and seeing them imbue that into the genre is really heartening to see. And seeing it get a large-scale adaptation like this is very heartening to see as well. So I'm leaving the link to all these articles that I've been posting up here in the description as well, so you can read the full article if you so choose. But that is very exciting for Tomi Adeyemi and Children of Blood and Bone fans. Now, the second piece of news is not really news, so I don't want to speculate on this. I just want to present the information, and you can kind of decide for yourself what's happening here. But in State of Sanderson in 2024, Brandon Sanderson had talked about how Mistborn was one of the adaptations that was forthcoming, and it seemed like out of his 7-step kind of metric on what it takes for an adaptation to be greenlit, it had really gotten kind of high up on the chain. So it was very close to greenlighting, and then it is now back to the drawing board. So I always love to follow and track projects on IMDb Pro just to see if people get added on them and see what happens, right? So I noticed that just yesterday, a Sarah Siskin was added as art department coordinator. Now, does that mean that this is actually moving? who knows, right? But I just want to present the information because that's stuff that's not widely known. Now, Sarah is also known for her work on Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So very high pedigree there. Very excited to see if this is maybe moving along behind the scenes, but they just can't make any formal announcements. So don't know what that means, but I just want to let you know the information. So moving on to an untitled Chronicles of Narnia film that's going to be on Netflix. Now, it is currently filming as of August 12th, 2024, and there is an actual release date now just announced, and it is November 26th, 2026. Now, this particular one is written and directed by Greta Gerwig, who did, of course, Barbie, right? So it'll be interesting to see kind of her take on it. She's really good with genre blends and things like that. It seems like there's a high pedigree of producers also involved in this particular production. We have Mark Gordon from Saving Private Ryan fame. We have Amy Pascal, a producer from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So, big pedigree involved in this. James Chinland, production designer from The Batman. So, yeah, it's good to see that some heavy hitters are involved in hopefully bringing that story to light the right way. I don't know how you felt about the previous adaptations, but I really enjoyed The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then I kind of felt like everything else fell off the radar for me. I would love to know what your thoughts are, and I'm curious to see how they do this. I mentioned this in a previous adaptation update, but as of October 7th, 2024, East of Eden has begun filming. Now, East of Eden is the John Steinbeck adaptation. It is going to be an anonymous content and Netflix collaboration, and it's going to debut on Netflix in 2026. Now, that is the piece of news here, is that there is an actual year announced. Beyond that, we don't know. TBD, but it will be in 2026, and it's starring Florence Pugh, Mike Faist, Christopher Abbott. So again, some pretty heavy hitters here. Curious to see how this all lands. I actually know one of the production executives who's deeply involved in kind of bringing this off the ground, and he's a very talented production executive. So, rooting for him just from a personal friend connection, and then also, rooting for this as well, because East of Eden is a phenomenal book. If you haven't read it, highly recommend you check it out. I mean, it's timeless. It really is. It kind of captures the spirit of an era in a way that few books do. If you like Stephen King, John Steinbeck was one of his biggest influences. So, character writing is his strong suit. I'm curious to see if Netflix does it justice in terms of the adaptation. So that is the next bit of little news there. Now, this next bit of news is very interesting for all you sci-fi fans. As a lot of people know, Denis Villenueve, the director of The Dune Part 1 and 2, which is one of the greatest sci-fi adaptations in recent memory, I would say. He had mentioned that he's going to be bowing out of future adaptations of Dune, I think after the next movie, if I remember correctly. But either case, he's kind of looking to expand his sci-fi repertoire. He has his eyes on Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. So I'm excited to see how he adapts that. I have yet to read it. Have you read it? Let me know in the comments. I have it on my shelf, so I'm going to read it this year, probably in anticipation of this. But it's interesting. An article just came out on January 27th, 2025, saying Rendezvous Rama is still in the works. Eric Roth has written an adaptation of this particular novel for Denis to direct. So, of all the projects Villenueve has percolating next after Dune Messiah, this is the one I'm most excited for. So, that is very heartening to see, because it seems like Denis Villeneuve, anything he puts his heart and soul into is going to be good. I just could tell he's one of those all-in types of directors. So, I'm excited to see this. More info in that article there for you. Now, as you know, I'm a huge fan of Stephen King. I have a whole shelf dedicated to the man back there. I've probably read like 50 or 60 of his books now. And I wanted to talk a little bit about 4 adaptations we can expect. 4 in 2025. So, Stephen King fans, buckle up, because we're in for one hell of a ride. So, I'm going to pull them all up here for you, and I'm going to put them on the screen so you can check those out as well. The first one, and the most closest to release date, is The Monkey. Now, this is based on a short story. I believe it was in the Skeleton Crew collection, if I remember correctly. It is starring Theo James, Tatiana Maslany, Elijah Wood, Christian Convery, Colin O'Brien, Rowan Campbell, and Sarah Levy. Now, the little log line for it is, when twin brothers Bill and Hal find their father's old monkey toy in the attic, a series of deaths start. The siblings decide to throw the toy away and move on with their lives, growing apart over the years. So, one thing I love about Stephen King, he has the horror, he has the character study. I'll be interested to see how this kind of works as a film adaptation. Now, there's Osgood Perkins is working on it, James Wan production. So it promises to be something very interesting, because I do feel like James Wan's involvement in Stephen King adaptations can be hit or miss, but I'm really, holding out on hope that this ends up being good. And of course, I'm going to read that short story again before the adaptation, which comes out February 21st, 2025. So little less than a month as of this taping. So excited for all that. Putting the link below. The second one is The Life of Chuck, which comes out May 30th, 2025. Now, this one was a novella in the If It Bleeds novella collection that came out, I think, in 2021, 2022. So this is starring both Tom Hiddleston and Mark Hamill. So I'm always partial to anything Mark Hamill's in. Even the, begrudgingly so, those Star Wars sequel series. But anything Mark Hamill's in, I'm going to give a shot. And I'm excited to see this because it is very genre bending. And I almost feel like unless it's done in a particular way that really captures the profundity of that story, it will be very hard. And also the surrealism of that story. It's going to be very hard to capture it properly in a film. So I really hope they do it justice. I'm curious to see. But here's the little log line for you. It says, a life-affirming, genre-bending story based on Stephen King's novella about 3 chapters in the life of an ordinary man named Charles Krantz. Now, one thing Stephen King also does really well is to make the ordinary profound. And he could write about an old lady running a diner, and you would be riveted for the 20 or 30 pages he talks about her, because that's how good he is with characters. It's very hard to adapt that, though. So I'm curious. I'm cautiously optimistic, maybe optimistically cautious, tomato. But I'm excited to hear, curious to see, your thoughts as well. So let me know in the comments as well. Now, the third adaptation that is set for November 7th, 2025, confirmed release date here is The Running Man. Now, there's no trailer yet, but it's starring Glenn Powell, Katie O'Brien, Carl Glusman, Daniel Ezra, Josh Brolin, William H. Macy, Jamie Lawson, Lee Pace, Michael Cera, and Amelia Jones. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know if you've all ever seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger hokey version of that adaptation, but as an 80s action fan and primarily an Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, it was always hokey and fun to watch, but really it didn't age well, right? So I'm excited to see kind of what this is going to be like in a film, because it says the futuristic United States of 2025 when the world has become a dystopia. Now, I don't want to get into anything political here, obviously, but it's funny that they are keeping to the 2025 dystopian kind of themes here. So let's see, how this all runs through. But I'm very curious to see, this particular film. And I'm excited because I think The Running Man is really long overdue for an adaptation. Now, the fourth one is actually TBA, but it is going to be released in 2025. And this is not a film. This is a TV series. It is It, Welcome to Derry. So now a trailer has been released. I'm putting that in the link in the description. If you click on the article with the 4 different Stephen King adaptations there, you can find the trailer as well directly. So it's starring James Remar, Stephen Ryder, Jovan Adepo, Chris Chalk, Bill Skarsgård, Madeline Stowe. So I don't know too much about this, but it says here it will follow the events in the 60s, the time leading up to the events of the first film in the Stephen King It series. So it looks like it's a prequel, which again could be done right, could be done terribly. I think when I watched the Salem's Lot adaptation on HBO Max earlier, it captured the 70s pretty well, I think. Not that I was born then or knew anything about it, but anything I've heard about the 70s or read about and stuff, it felt like it captured at least that well. The rest of the adaptation was a little bit iffy for me personally, but if this captures the 60s well, hopefully at least it could kind of transport us back into the time that the original, Stephen King adaptation, would have taken place in, right? So now that is considered the prequel because the It Chapter 1 and 2 take place in the 80s and the present day, respectively. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what you all think about the trailer. I think the trailer is okay. I don't think it blew my mind or anything. It might be just a fun, series to watch, but I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I would assume they probably release it closer to Halloween, but you never know with these types of things. So this is higher than my pay grade for sure. And then the last bit of adaptation news I want to talk to you a little bit about is that Project Hail Mary, the Andy Weir novel, is being adapted. I'd mentioned this before, and it's being and it's going to be released. It has an actual definitive release date because they have wrapped up the filming, and they are in post-production as of October 26, 2024. So their release date is May 20th, 2026. So we got a while to go. And the reason being is like sci-fi is very expensive to make. Same with fantasy, right? Once you go into post-production, you have color, you have music, you have sound design, you have dialogue cleanup, you have Foley. Like all the sound effects that you hear in these films are sometimes manually done, right? So think of the extreme amount of work, not to mention all the VFX to make those sci-fi worlds come to life, right? That takes a long ass time. It usually takes way longer than it takes in the pre-production and even production phase of filming and stuff. So no surprise there. So lots to look forward to, but I think we're going to have to wait quite a bit to look forward to it. But, that is it from me. I would love to know what you think about any of these. Are there any that are particularly exciting to you? I know as a Stephen King fan, those are probably the ones I'm most excited about. Also excited about and intrigued about Rendezvous with Rama. But I'm curious to know what you all think. I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. Thank you so much for watching. I love doing this kind of video segment because it's a chance to connect over a second love, that is tangentially related to books, which is how they are adapted for the big and small screen. So I'm going to put a little video here for you with a previous adaptation news. Kind of gives you an idea of some of the other projects that are in the pipeline. So make sure to check that out as well. I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. Thank you again for watching. Please like and subscribe. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. I will see you, as always, on the next video. Take care.